Today on the Lowdown, a Down syndrome podcast. Christina Nehring gives us a lowdown on her book, The Child Never Spoke. Over to you, Hannah Marla.
Thanks, Danielle. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the LowDOWN podcast. My name is Marla, and I'm joined here by my co-host, Hannah. On today's episode, we will be speaking with an author who documents her journey as a parent of a child with Down syndrome in her book, The Child Who Never Spoke, 23 and a Half Lessons in Fragility. Christina Nehring is a Paris-based award-winning author, essayist, scholar, and memoirist known for her spirited and contrarian reflections in publications like the New York Times, LA Times, The Atlantic, Harper's, Elle, Oprah, Slate, Condé Nast Traveler, and the London Review of Books, as well as many others. Her first book, A Vindication of Love, was reviewed glowingly on the front page of the New York Times Book Review. She has published 2 books in French since then, and in October 2023, she released her latest book, The Child Who Never Spoke, 23 and a Half Lessons in Fragility. Today, she's here to speak with us about her adventuresome, surprising, and yes, instructive journey as the single parent of a child with Down syndrome. But this is emphatically not a book in the main about disability or chiefly for the loved ones of persons with disabilities, but also a chronicle about how one might live a fulfilling and happy life. So welcome, Christina. We're happy to have you here on the Lowdown.
Thank you so much. I'm really honored that you're having me.
We are as excited as you are. We've both read your book, and we're very excited to talk to you about it today. Before we get into the book, let's start with our secret questions as our grand tradition.
Okay, Christina, so let's ask our first question. What is your preferred way to pass time on a long flight?
Oh, that's a good one. Writing, take notes.
Mm-hmm.
In the past, I took a lot of notes about how awful all these screaming babies on the were. The last time I made a notation like that, I was pregnant with a baby who I didn't know would have Down syndrome yet.
Yeah.
That would be the biggest screamer of them all.
Isn't that ironic and funny?
Just the irony of that all, yeah. Okay, great. And then question number 2, what is your favorite meal to have during the winter time? What's like your go-to comfort food in the winter?
My comfort food in the winter, I guess, is French onion soup.
Mm-hmm. It's very rich and delicious.
Very good one, yeah.
The French onion soup is easy to come by. I'm a terrible cook. So I tend to go to the local bistro and have a French onion soup, which I just love. I'm mainly vegetarian, though I have made exceptions. I'm a bit of a hypocrite. When I can, I eat vegetarian, and I love cheese, oh, I love onions, and so I love French onion soup.
Perfect. And I can imagine Paris probably has some of the best French onion soup, so you're in the right city for that. Okay, so our last question is, what is the most underrated city you have visited?
Probably the city in which my daughter was conceived.
Oh, really?
Crete. Crete, part of Greece, an island in Greece. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's western capital. It does have an airport. It hasn't had it for very long, but it now has an airport. And in contrast to the capital of Crete, Heraklion, which, other than having very interesting architectural things to see, is not really a very attractive city. But
Fair enough.
spelled Chania, is a beautiful, beautiful pastel-colored, alley-ridden, cobblestone-ridden, small town by the sea, and I love it to pieces.
Yeah.
Sounds absolutely fabulous.
Great. Yeah. Something to add to our travel list for sure. Thank you, Christina, for...
Don't forget it.
Yeah, don't forget it. Exactly. Crete, Greece, people, put it down. Thanks, Christina, for doing that with us. It's just nice to kind of get to know our guests on a little bit more of a personal level before we jump into the topic at hand. So let's start talking about your book. So first of all, the title of your book is quite unique and it invokes a lot of emotion. So can you tell us a little bit about the meaning behind the title and what prompted you to write the book?
Well, what prompted me to write the book is I didn't want to write about anything else. I was and I am crazy nuts about my daughter and about all the things she not only attempts to teach me, I don't always learn them, and teach the world. And so she was the obvious topic I would write about. What was the second question? The title?
Yeah, the title. Yeah, I was interested where that came from.
Oh, my daughter, in fact, as charming and happy and radiant as she is, doesn't really speak.
Mhm.
That is, maybe that's a bit of an overstatement. She has a few phrases. She has a few words in English and in French, like "je t'aime," I love you,
Important one, yeah.
Good one, yeah.
which she uses a lot. But the most striking thing about her, because she's otherwise really clever in 1,000 ways, in ways that I am not. She's far better with technology than I am. But the striking thing about her is she has a real language issue. She really never spoke at all properly. She has a few words, a few phrases, but and that's it. And 23 and a half lessons in fragility. 23 and a half is the number of chromosome pairs that Down syndrome has. So I decided to divide the book into 23 and a half vignettes about the things that Eurydice has tried, at least, to teach me, and hopefully will do a better job at teaching the whole world.
Yeah.
So every one of the 23 and a half short chapters has a little, often counterintuitive life lesson, like don't wait your turn, like stress is the fountain of youth.
It was such a vivid image. I remember that vignette that you described of you being stressed and just running through Paris at night so that your daughter would get some sleep. Yeah, it's beautifully structured.
Where I was taken for the first time. If I had been without my daughter, I would taken for a prostitute. because I was just in the worst parts of town. And I in the past, and I was always hit on, and it was a scary experience. But when I was running through these same parts of town near the Gare du Nord, the train station in the north of France, in the north of Paris, suddenly people were concerned about me. Homeless people would come up to me and say, "You know, you're in a dangerous place." Where? Oh, there's a hotel over there.
Yeah.
They're all protective of me.
Yeah. And the fragility component, Christina, I was just curious. So is that kind of indicative of just you being vulnerable and open to the lessons that your daughter was trying to teach you? I was struck by that part of your title too, the 23 and a half lessons in fragility.
Sorry, I missed the first part of your question. What? Could you run that by one more time?
Of course, yeah. We'll reset and try again. I was just the part in your title about the fragility component. I was just curious, was that alluding to your vulnerability and ability to open up to the lessons your daughter was trying to teach you?
Yes, absolutely. The fragility part refers both to Eurydice and to me. Eurydice, since you've read the book, you know, why your listeners perhaps don't know yet, was not yet 1 year old when she got childhood cancer. And was hospitalized ultimately for 8 months straight with no exit from the hospital at all because her immune system was so dead. And of course, I felt very fragile at that time as well. I was in the hospital. I was sleeping on the chair next to her crib. And we were both very fragile beings, and we continued to be even after she conquered cancer. But we ended up being fragile in a good way.
Yeah.
But to learn stuff and to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We have the pleasure in this clinic of working with families of all sorts, from families who are surprised to find out that they're going to have a child to families who went about having kids with, great anticipation and intention. For nearly all families, discovering their child has Down syndrome is often, almost always unexpected. Can you describe what the time in your life was like when you found out that not only were you going to have a daughter, but a daughter with Down syndrome?
Wow. Well, that's a long story. First of all, as I say in the introduction of my book, I never wanted a child. I was the adventurous, the nomad, the independent young woman. I didn't want a child to burden me at all. So the pregnancy, which occurred in Kenya, with a most inappropriate partner, but with whom I was very smitten, and who was very smitten with me, was completely unplanned, unexpected, unwanted. And I was, I mean, forget Down syndrome. I didn't want a straight A student.
Yeah. It's not in the plans.
Not in the plans at all. I wanted to be an adventurer. As I have been a travel writer for some time. I couldn't imagine toting a child around with me everywhere.
Yeah.
It was a complete shock.
Mm-hmm.
Her father wanted the child. And I didn't know what to do. So I asked my best friends, my parents, everybody close to me, besides the father, what they would do. And without exception, everybody said, don't do it. Wrong time, the wrong father, the wrong moment, the wrong everything. And I took that all in, but I have a contrarian streak. I'm a bit of a rebel. And hearing all these people say I shouldn't have this child because her father wasn't a Wall Street lawyer, and he wasn't the most reliable person in the world, and it was unplanned.
Yeah.
You think, why does she not have as much of a right to have a life as somebody conceived under more propitious circumstances? So I waited and I mulled and I thought about it, and then it became too late. Then it became 3 months, 4 months, and I wasn't going to have an abortion at that point. And so I thought, what the hell? I'm gonna play the cards that I've been dealt, and have this child, for better or worse. And so I did. I have to say, I am not a very a super forward planning, responsible person.
By the seat of your pants kind of person, right? Just see how it goes and let's just go on this adventure together, basically.
Exactly. I did not have an amniocentesis, the test that shows if your child has a genetic disability or not. I just didn't do it, and it was a complete surprise when Eurydice was born with Down syndrome. I mean, actually, everything the medical professionals had told me was wrong. They told me she would be a boy.
Oh, yeah. Everything was a surprise then.
Everything was a surprise, yeah.
She was a girl, which actually, because I like pretty dresses and things, and so I thought, yay, I have a girl. I can dress her like a mermaid. Anyway, when Eurydice was born, I did not know what Down syndrome was.
think that's common. Yeah.
But it did in parenting and in babies that I actually didn't know what it was. And when she was born, there were several people in the room, including her father. And I think everybody except for me knew right away that she had Down syndrome. There was one doctor who actually broke into tears.
Oof.
Which really, really gave me a scare. But I was puzzled, and Vassis didn't say anything. He just returned to my apartment in Paris. Eurydice was born in Paris, not in Greece. I had lived previously in Paris and had a tiny studio there. And I had more faith in French medical care than in Greek medical care. And I also spoke French, much more faith than Greek. And so I insisted that she be born in France rather than in Greece. And it wasn't until days later, after Eurydice had oxygen problems, she came out purple because she didn't have enough oxygen. And the doctors told me, oh, she has respiratory problems, she needs to go to the ICU, etc. But they didn't say anything about Down syndrome. But they said they also wanted to take a bunch of tests. And so they took a bunch of tests. And 3 days into our hospital stay, and I was staying in the hospital with her, breastfeeding her and watching over her in the ICU, and falling increasingly in love with her, I might say. Several doctors solemnly brought me and the father, who wasn't around much, but he was summoned and he actually came. We were solemnly paraded into this room and said, well, there's some good news and some bad news. And the good news is that your child does not have any heart problems, which is something that kids with Down syndrome very often have. The bad news is that she has a genetic disability, a genetic disorder, I should say. And Vasily, who knew a lot more about children than I did, said, Down syndrome? Even though he doesn't speak French?
Yeah. Yeah.
He got it, and he said, Down syndrome? And the doctors looked at him with surprise and said, yes, that's what we think it is.
Yeah.
And what is Down syndrome? The doctors then proceeded to explain to us that what involves intellectual disabilities, their physical features.
Focusing a lot on what she won't or can't do instead of the possibilities. And that's a very common theme. We hear that from so many families, that when that information gets delivered, it's not often with a positive outlook. And like you said, that they had very solemn tones and solemn, ways of kind of telling you, summoning you. And the good news, bad news thing is always a bad approach with this kind of stuff. So it's not uncommon, unfortunately.
I wanted to talk about one of the through lines in your memoir, which is this idea that we have no guarantee that things might improve or change to suit us better in the future. And kind of therefore, there's no time like the present to do things and try things and live your adventurous life. Can you speak about how that theme shows up now in your life with your daughter, who I think is an adolescent at this point?
She's 15 now, even though she doesn't look like she's 15. If she were here now, and she might be soon because she's out with her babysitter right now, but she might come bursting in. She looks like perhaps 7 or 8 years old. 15. Wait, what's the question exactly?
On how that theme of there's no guarantee about the future, so we might as well kind of seize the moment and live our life now.
Yes. I try actually not to think too much about the future. I'm very well aware that things could become more difficult as opposed to easier. I mean, people understand when a 2-year-old doesn't speak, but when a 20-year-old doesn't speak, it's a different story. School ends, and jobs are not obviously available, or at least not jobs that I would find desirable for my beautiful child. And so I just, not that I don't forward plan at all. I do have some ideas of what she in the future, but I basically try to seize the day and have the best time I can with her now. And I've done that ever since she was a little baby. And I think, I mean, I don't know, I don't want to give myself credit, give Eurydice credit, but I think that's part of the reason she's a really happy child. And even when she had cancer, when she had leukemia, and she was in the hospital for 8 months straight, having chemo in her, she had a catheter in her heart. She had chemo infused into her all the time. She was still in bright spirits. In fact, one of my favorite nurses, used to just come by our room to say hello, and she said, "I need my happy fix."
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Need my happy fix. So,
such an admirable quality for any person, and it's really delightful that you can foster that with the way that you guys are together.
yeah, we're a very loving pair, that I can say.
When I was reading your memoir, I was really struck by the differences in public perception and acceptance and inclusion between France and Paris and in Canada. And I actually suspect that your experience is much more common for families around the world. Can you reflect on what it's like to be one of those first parents who's the person making that path for other families to follow later? And I'm I'm kind of referencing here your experience in the school system and what that has been like, and whether she was going to be living with you, all of these kinds of themes that were talked about in your book.
Yeah, well, initially, after the doctors in the hospital made their solemn pronouncement that she had Down syndrome, I was actually asked, do I want to keep her? Do I want to put her in a home somewhere? And I was, by that time, even though she was only a few days old, I was completely smitten with her.
Mhm.
But it was suggested very, very obviously that I may not want to keep this child, and not only by the hospital people,
Yeah.
but I came back home to my studio apartment. The first person I met was the concierge, the woman who lets everybody in and cleans and runs the building. And the first thing she said was, there are solutions to this. You can put her in a home.
And
And I was just flabbergasted.
Mm.
I was actually holding her in my arms. She started to smile really early, especially for a child with Down syndrome. I was so obviously happy with her. But the concierge right away told me, give her away. Put her in a home. Bye-bye. And I said, this is her home. Here. Right here. Home. With me, and wherever we go, we're going to go together. So it was really strange in the beginning. Earlier that one doctor actually broke out in tears.
Yeah.
She wasn't even a French doctor. She was a Russian doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently she hadn't been trained in sort of bedside manner.
Yeah. I mean, the contrast is just so stark, right? Here you are, happy, attached to this infant. The infant is happy with you, and people can't see that. All they can see is the diagnosis, I suppose. Culturally, my suspicion is that what the concierge was saying and what the doctor was saying was maybe not as surprising, where here I think there would be maybe, hopefully, some outroar about that. But I think your experience is more common than we give credit to. And how was that like for you? I know you worked very hard to find an appropriate school for Eurydice, and so you had continued to advocate as a parent of a young child. And what has that been like for you to find the right place?
Well, that's kind of been a full-time job.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of parents feel that.
yeah.
And it has changed. She started out in a charming school right on the Seine River. It was a normal school, and she was still, 2, 3, 4 years old. And so incapacity for speech was not yet so striking.
And
But then she had to go to another school, the next school, and I managed to get her into a normal school as well. And it was also, I was actually completely charmed. It was on the Ile Saint-Louis, and that's right by Notre Dame, the big cathedral. And it was beautifully located. But Eurydice's speech deficiencies became more and more obvious. And as a result, she is now in a special school. She's in a school with average children. She's in a school with children who have some handicap or another.
Mhm.
It's a really good school too, though.
Does she enjoy it?
She enjoys it. She loves
I think that's important. Mm-hmm.
it. She's 15 and she has a boyfriend.
Oh boy.
20 before I had a boyfriend. She has this little boy who she adores, who also has Down syndrome.
Oh, I love that.
Like Eurydice, doesn't actually really look like he has Down syndrome, but he has Down syndrome, and he also has speech difficulties and his issues, but he's a consummate gentleman. And
Wonderful. That's a good first boyfriend, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And every day when she comes home from school, I ask her, "Did Nabil kiss you?"
Oh, yeah. It's like any other teenager, honestly, right? It's like any other teenager's reactions. Like, oh. And then it's really
With glee. She winks with glee. And I he went, "Mwah?" And she said, yeah.
it's nice to hear that she's kind of found a place for herself as well. So it's nice. I mean, it's good to hear that, you know, with all of your advocacy efforts and with supporting her the way that you did as she grew up, that she's at that point in her life where, you know, she has a life. She goes to school. She has a boyfriend. I'm sure she has lots of activities that she likes to do, travel with you. So it's
A lot.
yeah, that's really good to hear. Yeah.
Even though it's a little complicated, especially one thing I mentioned in the book is that she's a runner.
Mm-hmm. Also very common. Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
Call her and she doesn't necessarily come back. So it's a little bit complicated, but
You're still going. I think that's the thing.
and we both end up having a huge amount of fun.
Yeah. At the end of the day, that's what it's about, right? Like, it's obvious from reading your book and from speaking with you today that you guys have like just this amazing bond as a mother and daughter, right? You get each other, you learn from each other. And I was just curious, I mean, I know that your book is divided into 23 and a half vignettes or chapters. If you could maybe pinpoint it down to probably one very important lesson that you learned in the 15 years that you've been her mom. I know it's probably a very hard question because they continue to teach us. I think she's probably been teaching you since you found out she had Down syndrome, right? Like, that's when the learning really begins. But up till now, what has been maybe one of the biggest lessons that you've learned from your daughter?
it really is hard to say, but possibly stop waiting your turn, because a lot of my life I kept waiting for the great moments, the time that I would be ready to step up to the plate and live the way I wanted to live. And she has taught me that we don't know how much time we have. We don't know what the future holds. We've got to seize the present. We've got to embrace the moment, seize the day, which is like the Renaissance philosophers I studied when I was in a PhD program at UCLA. But she made it real for me. I read it in the Norton Anthology of English Literature, and I learned it in person from my.
That kind of lesson is much more real.
Yeah. And I think people with Down syndrome are experts in teaching us how to live in the moment and to take chances. I think no other group of people in my life that I've met has taught me that better. So I can see how that resonates with you as well.
Yes. There are so many lessons.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I knew it was going to be a good question, but it's just good to reflect on those things for us as well. So
For sure. Christina, we're coming to the close of our interview, and I want to make sure that we include, where can people find your book?
Well, they can find it very easily on Amazon.com. It's available as a paperback, as an audiobook, and as a Kindle book, and also as a hardcover. Even though there's a little screw up on Amazon, the hardcover is separate for some reason from the other 3 editions.
Okay.
But if you just type into Amazon, The Child Who Never Spoke, you don't even have to add 23.5 lessons in fragility, because the book called The Child Who Never Spoke.
Okay. I anticipate that many people will enjoy this book and really feel connected to it. So I'm so pleased that we had the chance to speak with you today. It's been a great pleasure of ours.
It's been a huge pleasure for me too, especially because I'm so scared of public speaking.
We're friendly. I was almost hoping that Eurydice would probably pop in.
I was also hoping that.
Maybe she'll come. Maybe she'll come, but I guess she's out there having fun with her babysitter right now.
I want her to come. She just...
she has come back. Oh, okay. That's awesome.
Sure. Yeah,
we would love to say a quick hello. That'd be great.
Rosie, can you bring Rabbit? They want to see her.
Oh, hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm happy to see you.
We fun today?
A lot more French than English.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Oh boy. Okay.
Thanks for being so patient.
Yeah.
The babysitter speak a lot of English to her, so she understands it.
Great.
France. She does speak more French.
That's fantastic. Au revoir. Au revoir.